So what is the greatest challenge today when it comes to personalized stories?
So I think there's a couple of things that kind of sit within this. One, the diversification of kind of systems is much more than ever has been before. So I think that's really, really difficult to even find opportunities to tell different stories. Tracking a consumer from end to end to end is very, very difficult. There are different IDs, there are different operating systems. So that is very, very challenging in and of itself. And then secondly, I think the way that consumers actually consume media now makes it really hard too. Those consumer journeys that used to be much more linear are very, very diversified now. And again, very difficult to kind of have a one size fits all process. And I think the final thing is kind of, we need to make sure we learn from the past a little bit and make sure that we give experiences that don't feel like what retargeting felt like in the kind of advent of programmatic, where customers were getting frustrated with kind of ad experiences, and make sure we're actually adding value, whether that's through driving more contextual relevance, whether that's through controlling our frequency, making sure that when we are storytelling, we're doing it in a way that doesn't kind of upset the consumer, but actually kind of adds value to what they're doing. So again, moving beyond just this really basic retargeting storytelling and moving to something that's a bit more complex and ultimately is actually a story rather than a crude advertiser's kind of perception of what story should be for a consumer.
So how has the importance of context in advertising evolved, and specifically the role of AI?
So I don't think context has ever necessarily kind of gone down in importance. I think context is one of the best signals that anyone can access, regardless of how much you maybe can understand your consumer through data. That it's always been a very, very important signal for us to take in. I think the really kind of exciting thing now for us is making sure that we can utilize a lot more signals than we ever could before. So how do we take all the wealth of data and context that lives online and in a variety of different kind of places and actually stitch that all together and make something that's a bit more nuanced and a bit more like ready for advertising today. Context has often been something that's quite blunt. And now actually we're creating a world where you can add a lot more nuance and a lot more kind of personalized context rather than necessarily something that's just like a genre of a TV show. So making sure that we're actually utilizing the capabilities of AI to stitch together that data, I think is really important in moving on from kind of this blunt picture of context we used to have. So again, I don't necessarily think the importance has changed. I think the ability to do it has got a lot better, and to add, again, kind of context to users is ultimately what we want to make sure we're doing.
So it's really the blending of context, AI, and first-party data coming together, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, first-party data is great. I think contextual AI is great in the way that you don't necessarily need that first-party data. So it actually gives opportunity to some of our clients. Some FMCG clients struggle because of offline conversion, so they don't always have that super rounded, amazing picture of their consumer that online retailers may have, for instance. So contextual AI allows still those advertisers to take in complex signals, rich data sets, and build a story around that rather than necessarily just having to rely on their first party data. If you can add that, even better. Like again, that creates something even more rich, even more personalized. So that is really good. But I think a really, really strong usage point is for those advertisers that struggle a bit with data and with kind of owning first party.
Why is contextual AI such a powerful tool?
I think, again, this idea of stitching together kind of resources challenging in media agency, as everyone knows. So being able to utilize AI to do a lot of the heavy lifting around kind of data system management, resource management, taking inputs, scoring inputs, that is very difficult for a kind of an agency and a company that isn't just in AI to actually do that. So the ability to kind of do that at scale is super, super exciting and super relevant, and not have to do it in sort of silos around certain individuals and certain ways of working. I think just the rapid expansion and growth of what AI can actually do, and being able to apply that into an advertising lens that's beyond just what ChatGPT can do or something like that, and actually making it something that's going to make a detrimental impact. It's going to make a real impact to our clients' campaigns in a positive way. And again, making sure that we can pull that data together and stitch that story together is really important.
Can you share a couple of use cases and how you would use contextual AI in, let's say, CTV?
Yeah, so I think CTV is a really interesting one because understanding context within video is really, really challenging. Like pulling something from text is relatively simple, an image gets a little bit harder, and then video is really, really difficult in and of itself. And I think as an industry, we've again been kind of, the information that comes through on CTV and in video channels can be quite limited and quite blunt. Like the things that come through the bid stream often are, again, quite blunt tools that you have to kind of use and manipulate to try and make sure that you can be as relevant as possible. AI, with kind of understanding video, pulling in more data signals, enables us within CTV to really drive a lot more of a contextually relevant experience than we could before, because we're previously just limited by what we had access to. So again, being able to pull in new signals that we probably didn't have before, that again create a richer understanding of what's in that video and what actually a consumer is kind of listening to and watching, is really, really exciting for us. And in terms of being able to do that in a CTV environment is just something that we struggle with a lot. And I think one of the challenges we face a lot within CTV is what does quality mean to advertisers? And that's something that can be very, very subjective. So AI is another way that we can kind of really try and understand what is happening in a video environment. That's very difficult to do based on the information you get passed back to you.
What excites you about the year ahead?
I think there's a couple of things. I think one of the things that within AI that we're starting to see a bit more in advertising is a bit of this democratization of AI. And I think it's very easy to fall into the trap that programmatic kind of fell into initially, where things are happening in silos and in black boxes, and people don't necessarily understand why certain decisions are being made. So companies that are willing to give a bit more insight around decisions that AI is taking and making sure that you can influence those decisions in a way by whether that's using first-party data, whether that's giving some constraints and controls, or kind of understand better why AI is making certain decisions and then look at how you can feed that into the rest of your campaign, I think are really, really exciting. And then, not to sound super unoriginal, but I think there's probably a lot of use cases that I'm not even fully aware of. So having been in programmatic, which has always kind of been very good at dealing with rapid change over the last 10 years, 15, 20, maybe 20, I think that just being in an industry where you're seeing rapid growth and rapid find of new use cases, new ways of operating, new challenges, I think is super exciting.